Hola, San Antonio, and welcome to another episode of Platica Politica. I'm your host, Robert Vargas III. Early voting starts on Monday in the Democratic primary, and I know what you're thinking. I can't believe we have to vote again. But in the March primary, if there are more than two candidates in the race and no one gets over the 50% threshold, the top two candidates move on to a runoff election. So today we're talking to Johnny Garcia, who's facing off with Maureen Galindo in the newly redistricted Congressional District 35. We're also speaking with both candidates who want to be your next district attorney. Jane Davis and Elena Chapa are each making their case for why they believe they are ready to serve as your next district attorney. So stay with us. We've got a great show for you today. Good morning, San Antonio, and welcome back to another edition of Platica Politica. We've got a fabulous morning going on for you today. Joining us is Jane Davis, who wants to be the next district attorney of Bexar County. How are you doing this morning, ma'am?
Doing great, Art. How are you?
Doing good. You are in the middle of a primary runoff election, right? We just had the primary. There were several people that ran, and now you're in the runoff facing off with Elena Chapa. How's the campaign trail treating you?
Oh, it's busy, but it's fun. I like people, and I enjoy meeting people. So it's fun to go around and all over the county and meet people. So I've enjoyed that part of it.
I was just going to ask, what's your favorite part? So meeting people is your favorite part. Let me ask you, what's been the most surprising part of running for office?
I think that the fact that there's so many people that are really involved and really want to do good for this county, and from all the kinds of homeowners associations, town halls, of course, the Northeast Democrats and the regular Democrats, the Tejano Democrats, everybody wants the best for this county.
Absolutely. So I have to ask, what made you decide to jump into the race and just throw your life into a tizzy and run for district attorney?
When I saw who all was running, there was 8 of us when we started, and they were all and still are all nice people. The fact of the matter is that I didn't think any of them were capable at this point in their career to do the best job for the DA's office and for the county. That's why I threw my hat in the ring at the last minute, because I love the county. I love the DA's office. I want it to do what it can and should do for the county.
So having said that, what makes you the most qualified? I mean, that's a very heavy statement to say. There's 8 people running. I didn't think they were all qualified. What sets you aside?
I have the most experience. I have the temperament, and I have the maturity. As far as experience goes, I have served 2 different district attorney offices here in Bexar County and in Guadalupe County. I was the first assistant in Guadalupe County. I have worked in the Bexar County DA's office for over 3 decades. I've worked in every section of the DA's office. I know how it should be done. I know how to try criminal cases. I have tried over 400 jury trials to verdict. I have, of course, as chief of the juvenile section, I'm handling thousands of cases every year. So I do have the experience. I know how it should be done. My opponent has never tried a criminal case, never worked in a DA's office. It would be like you're working in a position and your supervisor comes and tells you what to do, and your supervisor never has done that job or even worked in the building where you work. So you're supposed to take that suggestion or that order from somebody who is completely ignorant of how things can and should work. So that's one of the reasons I think it's important that I'm running, and I think it would be best for this county at this time for me to be the district attorney, because we need a strong district attorney. We need one who will stand up to ICE agents who come into our county and break our laws. We need a DA who knows how to do that. And I think that I am the person that is best suited at this time for this job.
So I want to touch on 2 of the things that you mentioned. One of the things you talk about is going after ICE agents or prosecuting ICE agents. They're a federal law enforcement agency. So some people have said it's something you can do. Some people say it's really not something you can do. What does that look like? When you say, I want to do that, what does that mean?
It means that if ICE agents break our law, they'll be arrested, they'll be charged with a crime, and they'll be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. It is important that we work with law enforcement, with SAPD, Bexar County law enforcement. And one of the things I would want them to do is if they are at a scene where ICE agents are involved, that they would put on their body cameras, keep them running. And if a crime is being committed, that body cam information, that evidence will be forwarded immediately as a matter of course to the DA's office for our review so that we can see if a crime has been committed.
And for our listeners who who aren't in law enforcement, they don't have law degrees. When you say when ICE breaks a law, what kind of laws? I mean, because you assume that cops and law enforcement are following the laws or know the laws, but when you say when they break the laws, what type of laws are those?
Well, let's start with murder, kidnapping, assault, aggravated assault, interference with evidence collection. I'm part of a coalition, or I would like to be part of a coalition if I am district attorney, with several district attorneys throughout the nation. And some of us are already bringing charges against ICE. For example, in Minneapolis, they brought an aggravated assault charge for an ICE agent showing and pointing a gun in a road rage incident. That sort of thing is not to be tolerated. And so I think it would be very important that we are tough on people who think they're above the law. I think it's important that we stick together as far as our police, our law enforcement, and that we do everything we can to prevent crime from being committed against us by anybody, but especially ICE agents.
No, absolutely. Thank you for answering that. So one of the things that the district attorney deals with a lot, at least our current DA, he talked a lot about criminal justice reform. So our outgoing district attorney, Joe Gonzalez, pushed for several reform-oriented policies like cite and release, the creation of the Civil Rights Division. As the next DA, are those policies that you're going to continue? Do you want to scale back? Or what, when you think of criminal justice reform, what does that look like to you?
Criminal justice reform is, I hope, here to stay, because we do need to reform some things that we have been doing over the years. And Joe Gonzalez started with cite and release, and I think that's a good program. I think it needs some restructuring a little bit to do it better. I think one of the problems that the officers have with cite and release, because I've talked to several of them, is that, for example, when they stop someone with marijuana, they collect the marijuana and they give the person a ticket. Well, but the officer has to do something with that evidence. And so they must put it in the property room so that it can be used in a case later. Well, it seems to have been a problem with the officers that there's no place to put it. They still have to go to the property room to take it. So we need to work with them to be able to have locations where that can be stored, where it still saves the officer time, which is what it was set out to do. But with cite and release, we have prevented 13,000 jail people, jailings, over the few years that we've been doing it. Another thing I think is important is the pretrial diversion. If we can address the criminogenic factors that someone has that has got them in trouble, and if we can, in their probationary term, address those factors with conditions that will address whatever is causing their thinking errors, then we can perhaps get them on the right road. If they're a licensed professional, we can prevent them from losing their license, but we can get them corrected so that they can be a better citizen. And that's with the pretrial diversion, with conditions that would come with that. So that's a couple of things that have been done that I think is good. Civil rights, yes. My opponent has said she wanted to put the civil rights unit in with the public integrity unit. Well, it's been that way for over 2 years. So, she's behind knowing what's going on in the DA's office.
It's certainly been an interesting race. You all have definitely kept it interesting. I know that for a lot of folks have been getting the mail pieces from the different candidates and whatnot. And so I always say there's no better telenovela than Bexar County politics. And so I want to know, you've talked about your opponent. What separates you from her specifically? Let's just talk about that right now.
She has no experience in knowing what the DA's office basically represents the state in criminal trials. Now, we do other things too, but we basically represent the state, and she has never tried a criminal case, never worked in a DA's office. And that's what separates us, because I know how to do these things. And if she were to come in as district attorney, it would be almost on an intern level position. She would have to be schooled by whoever she would choose to school her on how to run a DA's office. I know how to run a DA's office. I believe that it would be much more efficient, and I would be able to bring justice, to bring clarity, to bring consistency. And I think it would be a much better working relationship with the assistant district attorneys and the staff if I were the DA.
We're going to give Elena Chapa the opportunity to respond. For those of you that are listening, she's going to be interviewed next, so she will have an opportunity to respond. But I want to ask you, every district attorney that comes in, they have new goals? You know, when Susan Reed was DA, she was real big on DWIs and hot checks. Joe Gonzalez came in as a reformer. What is it that the district attorney's office looks like under a Davis administration?
It looks like we're doing the right thing, that we are fair, and we are involved basically with public safety. We want to make sure that victims are treated correctly and compassionately, that victims have the understanding and the options that may be available to them to make them as whole again as they can be. We need to make sure that our morale in the office is good, and that we have taught young prosecutors how to go about their job and give them the discretion to go about it in a professional way. So all of those things, it would be consistency, fairness, doing the right thing in an administration that I led.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're talking to Jane Davis, who's running for district attorney. We're going to ask some more questions, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
Estás escuchando Platica Política. Quédate con nosotros para enterarte de las últimas noticias, análisis políticos y un poco de chisme. Aquí en Queda Radio Jalapeño.
Así es. Escúchanos en directo, síguenos en las redes sociales o sintoniza donde quiera que escuches tus podcasts favoritos.
And we're back. We're talking to Jane Davis, who is facing off with Elena Chapa in the race for district attorney. The election starts on Monday. You're going to get to go out and vote on Monday for who you want to be the next district attorney of Bexar County. Jane, you still having fun?
Yes. I think it's very energizing to get out with the people and hear from them, to know what they need, what they want. I've been especially proud of the endorsements that I've gotten. And so it's a great time. It's a great work that's being done.
Who's supporting you?
Well, the Express News has supported me not once, not twice, but 3 times. They
All
have
right.
me, and the most recent was just a couple of days ago. It will be out in the printed newspaper. It was already in digital. They've supported me again and said I am the candidate that is the best qualified for this job. The IBEW, the AFL-CIO, the CWA, LBGTQ plus, Victory Fund, Commissioner Calvert, the ATF, and Tejano Democrats. Also, most of my former opponents, we started with 8 people running. Most of my former opponents have endorsed me because they, number one, care about this county, and they care about this office, and they know it needs to be run well. And they have endorsed me as being the person who can do it best.
No, that's awesome. So I want to ask you about that. You've got all this support. How would you handle pressure from politicians, donors, and elected officials when it comes to being the district attorney? I'm sure everybody's going to have your cell phone, and all your jokes are going to be the funniest jokes they've ever heard. And once you get elected, you're going to get calls. How is that going to work out for you?
I have always, throughout my whole career, said, do the right thing. And
Sure.
when you do the right thing, you can call people to bring themselves to a higher level, to know what the right thing is and to do the right thing. And I've always said that I am not a puppet of politicians or special interests. I'm a career prosecutor, and I want the job to be done right and honestly and do the right thing continuously, to have consistency in the office, to have justice and fairness. And I believe that is the way the district attorney should do. And so, I've got a thick skin, and I'm not going to be swayed and be pulled by special interest groups or politicians that think that they need to run the DA's office.
At the beginning of the interview, you talked a lot about being aligned with Joe Gonzalez as far as criminal justice reform and some of his policies. But the reality is, with all due respect to Joe, love the guy, great individual, but he also has been very unpopular amongst law enforcement and amongst different things. Is your leadership just going to be a continuation of the Gonzalez administration, or are you going to be different or forge your own path?
Oh, I'm going to forge my own path. I believe it's very important that we work well with law enforcement, that we respect law enforcement, and that we trust. I think that the DA's office needs to be trustworthy, and I'm not saying that Joe's not trustworthy. I don't mean that at all. I'm saying that we need to be trustworthy, and we need to trust. And we're going to have a new police chief, and we're going to have a new DA, and it's time to be working together and working in concert to do the right thing. And that's what I want to do.
No, that's important. I do want to ask, changing directions a little bit about mental health. What a lot of folks don't realize is that our jails and our criminal are probably the biggest mental health provider in Texas, which is terrifying, right? Law enforcement officers are not equipped for that. They're not trained for that. What are you going to do to help address the mental health crisis? I mean, right now, and I'll say one more thing. Right now, we have so many people that are ending up in jail for simple crimes, and they're dying in our jail. And when they die in our jail, then that's an automatic lawsuit against the county, right? How do you, as a DA, face that and deal with that?
I do not believe that it is smart as a government to house mental health patients in our jail. I am highly in favor of our diversion center that our county is talking about building and has already got it in the works. I think we need to divert people who have mental health issues from the jail to other facilities. So that's one thing I would certainly do, is support that. As far as, what was the second question you asked me, Robert?
Well, it's just how are you going to deal with that as the district attorney? It's very difficult when you've got law enforcement sometimes that does this. You have a bail system, in my opinion, that's very broken. I call it a criminalization of poverty. And so how do we as a community deal with that? How do you as a district attorney deal with that? I
think that we need a risk assessment tool that we do not use at this point to set bail. I think it's important that we determine that we should not put people in jail and keep them there because they're poor and can't make bail.
Sure.
That's not the right thing to do. The law says the reasons for that bail set is because you want them to return for trial and you don't want them to be a threat to public safety. So a lot of those people with low-level crimes are not a threat to public safety. They just don't have any money. With a good risk assessment tool that, like other jurisdictions use, we can assess whether or not that bail should be set pretty low or none at all. Now, as far as criminals that are repeaters or dangerous to society, that bail needs to be very high. It needs to be also understood by your listeners that the DA's office doesn't set bail. The DA's office recommends a setting of bail, and the magistrate or the judge sets the bail. And I would want my prosecutors, if that person is a threat to society, to recommend and fight for a high bail for those sorts of people. No, absolutely. It's important that we're not criminalizing poverty, right? And then we're not keeping people in jail that don't belong there. So I absolutely agree with you on that. Would you ever be in favor of abolishing the cash bail system? That may be a loaded question, but it is. I think it should be studied. I think we need to work with our risk assessment and figure out what is best for this county. And I have to ask you, now that you're heading into this primary, obviously in the primary, what most people don't understand is that, or realize, is that the Democrats are selecting their nominee and the Republicans are selecting their nominee. Basically, you're saying I'm the best Democrat to face up against the Republican in November. And so why should Democratic primary voters vote for you as opposed to Elena that's been a Democrat for many years? Not that you haven't been, but she's run for office as a Democrat many years. Well, I'm not a politician, but I am a Democrat, and I've been a Democrat forever. The thing about voting for me in the primary is that I have the experience and the ability to go in on day one and lead this office with integrity and fairness and openness. not hiding anything, just going and doing the work that needs to be done. As far as running against a Republican in the fall, I think that the same thing holds true for me, in that the Republican nominee who's already announced has a lot less experience than I have. And so I think that I would do a better job than that person too.
No, very good. Jane, thank you so much for joining us. What do you want voters to know about you before you head out?
I think that we want the best for the county. And I think that we don't want games to be played. We don't want special interests to be in charge of the DA's office. We want fairness and justice. And that's what I would bring. And I think if you forget my name, Jane Davis, I am first on the ballot and first for the job. I think that I would be the best. And I love the county. I love the DA's office, and I want it to do well. And I want the county to have the services that the DA's office can bring to the best extent that we can bring them. And so that's why I'm asking for your vote.
All right. Thank you so much. You can visit davisforda.com for more information about Jane and her platform, as well as why she wants to be the next district attorney. Thank you so much for being with us, Jane. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar. If you're seeking a law enforcement career that offers competitive pay and excellent benefits in a county that truly respects and supports its law enforcement professionals, with a history dating back to 1731, in a safe, welcoming community where you can confidently raise your family, and where the cost of living is truly sustainable, then consider starting your career with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. Call 210-335-JOBS or text deputy to 210-934-7028 to learn more.
We are back on Platica Politica. Whether you're in Gonzales, Uvalde, Travis County, or Atascosa, we hope you're having a fabulous Saturday morning. You get to hear all the chisme going on in Bexar County. I always like to say there's no better telenovela than Texas politics. So continuing the telenovela, we got Luz Elena Chapa. I feel weird calling you Luz because I've been so used to calling you Judge. How are you doing today?
Hi, Robert. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me on your show. I'm very excited to be with you and your listeners.
Absolutely. You decided after being a lawyer, a judge, to jump in this race for district attorney. Tell me about that.
I did. So I had the honor and privilege of serving on the Fourth Court of Appeals for 12 years and sat as a visiting judge in the Fourth Administrative Judicial Region for 1 year after I lost my reelection bid in 2024 when Abbott swept me away. Formally resigned in order to run for district attorney. And what called me to take this leap of faith is after Judge Ron Rangel decided not to run, my phone started ringing, and for several days. And, this wasn't a knee-jerk reaction by any stretch. It was wanted to be very mindful of what the role this next district attorney, who it needed to be and why. And when I dug deep after 8 weeks of meetings with victims, with current prosecutors, with former prosecutors, with actually speaking to the current district attorney himself, with elected officials, really trying to get an understanding of why this office is so broken. And we need to do better in Bexar County for the people of Bexar County. From day one, when I'm DA, day one, the tone and culture will be one of collaboration, of support, of empowering prosecutors, making sure that staff feel valued. And we are mission-driven mindset folks who are really trying to put victims first and deliver justice to them, because justice has been denied for years. And once we set that culture and create that culture and set that tone, I believe that we are going to create an office that is mission driven. And currently it's my understanding that we've lost 140 prosecutors in the last 8 years, 140. Many have told me that it's due to a hostile working environment. So we need to change that immediately, because I know the prosecutors who are there now, they do want to deliver justice, but they want to do it in a way and in an environment that helps alleviate the stress. This is a hard job. So we need to make sure that people have the tools, the funding, and the training to be the best prosecutors they can possibly be for the people of Bexar County.
So I understand that there's a massive backlog issue in felony cases in the DA's office, especially family violence cases. How do you feel that you're going to address it? Is it through increasing staffing? Is it through changing the way that they prosecute? What does that look like?
So it looks like immediately assembling a team of the top talent in the office and also hiring new talent and getting the job done by bringing all of the files in one room essentially and going one by one, seeing what case it has sufficient evidence, what cases might need more. But sadly, what is happening now, many of these cases have gone stagnant. And so when now they're choosing to prosecute any given case, it's been so long they can't find witnesses to prove up their case. And they also sometimes encounter victims recanting. They don't want to prosecute anymore because they have returned in that abusive relationship and the circumstances aren't right because it's almost been 2 years. So we need to make sure that we fast track the existing backlog and making sure we put systems in place to avoid this in the future.
So your opponent has gone out of her way to say you've never worked at the DA's office. You have no prosecutorial experience. By the way, I'm very proud of myself for saying that word correctly. She says you have no prosecutorial experience. You're not experienced. How does your work as a judge on the Fourth Court of Appeals translate to this job?
Thank you for that question, Robert. So as an appellate judge, half of my docket was criminal cases. And during my tenure, my 12 years, I authored about 600 criminal opinions and with only one reversal. And I ruled on thousands more criminal cases as a panel member. And as an appellate judge, what that entails is you receive a record of what has transpired at the lower courts, and you dissect the record, and you are addressing the issues presented, the litigants before you. And so you go through all of the evidence and you just make a ruling based on the standard of review, and you either affirm, reverse, or you can also remand it for something else that's maybe lacking at the trial court level. So it is knowing what cases to prosecute, what cases, currently in the DA's office, for instance, in the intake, in the discovery phase, it's my understanding that lawyers are accepting every case that comes through the door. And that creates a backlog. Why? Because in some cases, there isn't sufficient evidence to continue through the pipeline to prosecution. So we need to make sure that the intake discovery lawyers who are at the forefront of all, meaning at the receiving, the time they receive a new case in the DA's office, we need to make sure that they know what evidence to be looking for. And if there isn't sufficient evidence at that early stage, then they need to have a collaborative relationship with law enforcement and guide them. And that's all based on current law, current case law, current statutes. So we need to make sure that our intake lawyers are fully trained on that level as well. And so, and as a visiting judge, I had the opportunity to really see for myself how broken families are in Bexar County. I presided over many cases involving termination of parental rights and protective orders. There is an underlying issue that has gone unaddressed far too long, and it has to do with domestic violence.
Okay. Would you say that domestic violence is going to be one of your priorities to address as a district attorney? Susan Reed, her big thing was hot checks and DWIs. We remember those commercials and those press conferences. Joe was all about criminal justice reform and sign release. What are your priorities?
It is absolutely turning this office around to making sure that it is a victim-centered office, meaning we are going to work for victims. We are going to make sure that prosecutors are trauma-informed, trained, because time and time again, I have heard that victims come to the DA's office currently and they feel re-victimized. So that has to stop. So we need better tools to how to interact with victims who have experienced possibly the worst traumatic experience in their life. But I'd like to also parse out and make cases involving children make that a special crimes unit with children, and then also with adults, because how we approach those cases are different based on the age of the children, and based on the adults, and depending on, every case has to be looked at very differently depending on whether there are children or adults involved.
No, absolutely. All right, y'all, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Platica Politica right here on KEDA Radio Jalapeno. You can listen to us online, watch on Facebook Live, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We'll be right back.
Estás sintonizado. You are listening to Platica Politica. We're live on KEDA Radio Jalapeno 99.9 FM and 1540 AM, and on Facebook Live. Stay here for the latest news, politics, and a little bit of cheese, man.
We're back right here on KEDA Radio Jalapeno. I want to change the conversation a little bit. I want to talk about what is it that you believe, because that's really what people want to know, is what makes Luz Elena Chapa, Luz Elena Chapa. And so some of the things that you all deal with or one of the major things that you deal with is crime and criminal justice reform. What would you say, Luz, is your perspective as far as criminal justice reform?
So, Robert, that's a complex question,
Sure.
And I'm going to try to simplify in a way that makes sense to your listeners and makes sense to me. Actually, first and foremost, I think it's it is of paramount importance for the district attorney to have a strong pulse on the community's needs.
Okay.
Right now, we are suffering from a domestic violence crisis. We are suffering from a mental health crisis. The issue of homelessness is a serious problem.
Absolutely.
So when I lean into this new role, a major issue also is ICE and what they are doing to our community members. And so I like to share this with your listeners. I'm a 52-year-old daughter of a Mexican immigrant mother who raised me on the border. I feared the men in green uniform as a child. So what is going on in our respective community here locally, across our state, across our nation, it is personal to me. And right now, only in Minneapolis, there's one case in which the district attorney is going after ICE agents because they violated a state law.
Okay.
And I have, from the very beginning, been incredibly consistent on whether you're wearing a blue uniform or a green uniform. If there is evidence that you have committed or you've broken the law, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent. Sure. So that's the first issue. So, secondly, mental health. I've been a mental health advocate in our community for almost 15 years now. I served on the board of Clarity Child Guidance Center for about 10 years. One of my brothers has schizophrenia. So with their blessing, my mom's blessing and his blessing, I spoke publicly for the first time about 13 years ago. And if we're not open about mental health and our needs of our community, we're not speaking up, then our elected officials who are representing us don't know the dire need for funding. So as we lean into this new role as district attorney, I am going to be at the forefront advocating for a diversion center, because that is going to help alleviate the overcrowding of the jail, where we know that there are at a minimum 100 inmates who actually need a mental health bed. They don't need to be behind bars. And we also need to save money for the county, because I know the county is spending $7 to $9 million per year, because now the sheriff has to go out and look at surrounding counties where to jail inmates. So we need to do a better job in making sure that our elected officials have a strong pulse on our community's needs. And it starts with head first addressing core issues: mental health, drug and alcohol abuse, poverty, domestic violence. And why are these crimes being committed over and over again? And more importantly, why are these crimes not being prosecuted? And quickly, efficiently, and swiftly, to making sure that victims receive justice and abusers are held accountable.
Absolutely. And talking about the homelessness issue, we're not going to be able to arrest our way out of a problem, right? And I think that one of the challenges that we see, and I talked about this earlier, is that, the largest provider of mental health is the jail in every Texas city, right? That is a Texas-wide issue. And so we have to change the way we prosecute those cases, not to testify myself, right, in this case, but it's like we have to change the way we're addressing homelessness and mental health and not trying to arrest our way out of the problem. Because we get the person off the front porch of that business or that home, but then from there, they end up in our jail. And, I'll say it costs a minimum, I think, of $75, if I'm not mistaken, to house an inmate per day. You add all the medication and everything else that you've got to do. That person is, number one, not being cared for regularly. And number two, they're being provided with mental health and medical services by deputies who are not equipped for that, right? And so that puts us in such a strange predicament. How will you work with our judges to get people out of jail? I know a lot of times some of the issues are the judges and the lawyers and folks not getting together on a regular basis.
So I do believe that I have that skill set where I can bring people from different sectors within the criminal justice system to the same table and have hard conversations and making sure that we are leaning into every issue, mission driven and egos and politics set aside, making sure that we know our purpose, and our purpose is to serve the people of Bexar County, and our purpose is to address those core issues. We need to do better. We need to allocate funding to making sure that services are being provided. Mental health it's a public health issue, and we are in a crisis. At any given time, I will say this, again, I'm going back to domestic violence because that's at the forefront of my mind. Sure. Within the last week or so, we've had 5 murder-suicides in Bexar County. Just this morning, there are 2 children who were found in a burning car. And, it is alarming that crime is it's an everyday occurrence here in Bexar County. Shootings, for the most part, they stem from a domestic violence situation. So when we're not addressing those core issues, when we're not collaborating, when we're not, having those strong conversations and dialogues with judges, with county leaders, those who provide the funding, but funding doesn't only stop at the county. We have to go search for funds at the city level, at the state level, at the national level. We need to make sure that we are using all of our resources to finding grants. And I've served on 6 nonprofit boards, so I know how to write grants. I know how to make sure that funding is coming from other sources. So we need to do better in terms of just collaborating. Where it seems like we're working in silos, but it's like it needs to stop, and we need to come together, roll up our sleeves, and get the work done.
So one of the issues that's really important to me, just personally, it's one of my pet projects, is bail bond reform. What's your perspective on bail bond reform, the cash bail system? Can I get you to commit to abolishing the cash? I'm just kidding. I won't ask you that. But, what is your thought process on the cash bail system?
So, Robert, because I was a judge for 13 years and I'm a rule of law type person, I will always follow the rule of law.
Sure.
And I might not agree with a rule of, a certain law that's in place, but we have to be mindful to always keep the 8th Amendment, the spirit of the 8th Amendment alive, right? The 8th Amendment was designed to make sure that bail isn't used as a tool of oppression. Mm-hmm. And so, but bail does serve its purpose, right? We need to make sure that our community is safe from the most violent of criminals. So, and judges have that discretion, the magistrates have that discretion, but also making sure that a prosecutor is there 24/7 at the magistrates to making sure that a bail, when it's warranted, it does need to be high to making sure that our community is safe. It depends on the crime, on the alleged crime, right? But also in instances where, if cases aren't, if they're not moved, if someone is jailed and they don't meet their bail, they can't, there's 90 days where you have to either move it forward or they get released in a PR bond. And so that also creates a safety issue. But again, bail is designed to making sure that defendants show up for their court hearings, and making sure that people are allowed to continue their daily lives with work and family, and then show up for their court hearings. And, the path of restorative justice is a wide and open one, but it's also capped in our specialty courts. So we need to do better to making sure that we are increasing our numbers on those who we can serve to get services they need to rehabilitate themselves.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy lady. You got lots of doors to knock on and lots of fundraising to do as you head into this primary election. So primary runoff election, I should say. So Luz, what would you like folks to know before you head out?
So this is what I'd like for folks to know. I decided to run for this office because I know what it entails. I know that the hard work is going to require 24/7, all hands on deck. Sure. And I'm not running as a one-term placeholder DA. I am running for the long haul, making sure that Bexar County has a district attorney's office that are working for the people of Bexar County, but also has consistent, strong leadership. We can't do this again in 4 years. It's just unacceptable. Sure. And it is going to take a long time to repair the brokenness of the office. It's going to take time to rebuild the public's trust in the DA's office, and also with law enforcement, frankly. So I'm a change maker. I have the energy to make significant changes for the benefit of our community, improve public safety, working with Sheriff Javier Salazar, for instance, working with Senator Jose Menendez, Congressman Joaquin Castro, all of whom have endorsed me. We are going to address criminal justice and the reforms needed to making sure that our public, members of our public are safe. And that's my goal. And I respectfully ask for your vote. As you know, Robert, May 18th to the 22nd, only 5 days of early voting.
That's right.
I'm asking every listener to make sure that you vote early. Election Day is the day after Memorial Day, which I know we were going to be, celebrating our veterans, which is a great cause, and we need to do that. But I'm going to respectfully ask for your vote, listeners, and making sure you vote early. I'm a mother of 3 children. We are all in this to win it, and I can't wait to serve you as your next Bexar County District Attorney. Soy Elena Chapa, y sería un honor servirles en esa capacidad. Gracias.
Thanks, Luz. We're going to take a quick break. That was Luz Elena Chapa. You can learn more about her at chapafordA.com. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Estás escuchando Platica Política. Quédate con nosotros para enterarte de las últimas noticias, análisis políticos y un poco de chisme. Aquí en Queda Radio Jalapeño.
Así es. Escúchanos en directo, síguenos en las redes sociales o sintoniza donde quiera que escuches tus podcasts favoritos.
All right, we are back on Platica Politica. It's been a great Saturday morning. I hope everyone is having a beautiful day in this great city. Joining us this morning is Johnny Garcia, who's running for United States Congressional District 35. How are you doing, sir?
Doing good. Out on the campaign trail, as you can see, coming from my vehicle. Glad to be back on Platica Politica.
Absolutely. How has the race been for you? You were in the Democratic primary. There were several people running. Now it's you facing off with a young lady named Maureen Galindo, who's been in the news. We're going to talk about that. But how's this campaign life treating you?
It's going great. I went from growing gray hairs at the sheriff's office to just growing more gray hairs here on the campaign trail, but it's been great. We are now seeing in this runoff election just how scared the Republican Party is, as they're now spending an upwards of $340,000 to uplift my Democratic opponent, because they clearly see that we're a threat in this race. They clearly see that if we don't make it out of this runoff and our opponent does, it's an easy win for them. So we're fighting with everything that we have. We're rallying support. We're broadening our coalition, and we are strengthening and unifying our Democratic Party here in this runoff more than ever. And it's why I feel so proud to keep going in, making sure that we win this runoff election and ultimately step off as the nominee to head into November and pick up this seat for Democrats.
Republicans thought that they were going to redistrict their way into a victory here in this race. What are you seeing out there? What are you thinking about this particular race? Is it a viable race for Democrats?
It absolutely is. We're seeing Democrats, independents, and Republicans who are frustrated with what they're seeing in this administration. We're seeing Trump's approval ratings dip further than any president that we've ever seen in American history. I was just up in Highland Hills a couple of days ago for a forum. And as soon as we stepped off of the stage, a woman comes up to me and she says, everything that you had to say was so refreshing to hear, not knowing who she voted for. And I said, well, thank you so much, ma'am. I would love to have your trust and your support here in this runoff election. And she says, I'm sorry, I can't vote for you. I'm a registered Republican. And I said, okay, well, I'd love to have your trust and support in the general election. And she says, you have it. What the Republicans are doing for us is doing nobody any good. It's not benefiting the working class families and small businesses here in this district. And we're hearing this message over and over throughout the district. And it's why I'm so happy to be running in this race, because we do stand a chance to win this seat. We do stand a chance to make sure that this gerrymander turns into a dummy-mander and backfire on Donald Trump and Greg Abbott.
Now, I love that, the dummy matter. We're going to totally use that from now on. I think that's a new phrase that we're going to have to use, and definitely have to coin that and credit that to you, because it really is a dummy matter. I mean, these people think that they're going to be able to do whatever they want. If they can't win, they're trying to cheat their way to victory. We have to make sure that as Democrats that we're standing together. All right, so Johnny, speaking of Democrats, you've had some great folks supporting you, like Hakeem Jeffries and those types of folks. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, it just goes to show how important this race is for Democrats. Everybody is really starting to see and wake up to the realization of how important this race is. Just the other day, I was speaking to Pete Buttigieg, who said, look, Johnny, if there's any indication of how much of a threat you are in a race, it's when you get Republicans to spend against you. As we're seeing this Republican super PAC claiming to be and appearing to be what they would think is a Democratic PAC. It's really a Republican PAC helping to uplift my weaker opponent. It's the reason why we've gotten an overwhelming amount of support just in the past couple of days. Within the last 24 hours, I was able to secure Congressman Greg Casar of District 35, who was redrawn out of it and now is running in the 37th Congressional District. I was able to get Congressman Lloyd Doggett's endorsement yesterday, who was the first Democratic leader to represent District 35. Today, I was just able to pick up Joaquin Castro's endorsement. We're seeing our Texas coalition coalesce around our campaign because they see the viability and the strength that we bring to this race. We're consolidating all of our lanes in our Democratic Party, and we are a big tent party from our progressive and to our moderate lanes. It's now this coalition that's going to take us as a party and as a collective together to ultimately head into November and pick up this seat. We're getting people excited. As I just mentioned, Democrats, independents, and Republicans are all coming over to our party now because they finally see hope that Democrats can win and ultimately put some guardrails on this reckless administration. And hopefully, when we win this race, and we know that we will, we'll be able to make life more affordable and easier for everyday Texans. And families will be able to make it to Sunday to buy their barbacoa and big bread. But it all starts by winning this election on May 26th. Early voting starts May 18th through May 22nd, with Election Day on May 26th. And we need everybody to show up and turn out so we give ourselves the best chance to win as Democrats here in Texas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Johnny, what do you want Mrs. Martinez and everybody else that's out here listening to know before you head out?
I need Mrs. Martinez and all of our primos and primas to know that Johnny Garcia, that I'm no different than them. I grew up on the west side of San Antonio. Yep. I graduated from Memorial High School. I worked construction and plumbing after graduating while going through St. Philip's College, literally building America from the ground up, working construction and plumbing, digging trenches by hand, installing PVC pipes in newly built homes here in our community. I and join the sheriff's office, where I've now served nearly 2 decades protecting and serving the residents here at Bexar County. And I'm going to continue fighting to serve the folks here in this district, because we know that in law enforcement, we do not have the luxury to lose. When we lose, people die. And in this midterm election cycle, so many folks are depending on a strong Democrat to win this race and ultimately get into Congress and fight against the extremism that is being put upon all of us by this administration. And it's why it's so important that we continue to build our coalition, continue to let folks know in this district that there's a strong Democratic Latino candidate that is going to fight for them. I tell people this: siempre lucharé por mi gente y nunca olvidaré de donde vengo. I'm always going to fight for you and your families, and I'll never forget where I come from. And this is the mentality I'm taking with me to Congress.
All right, that's Johnny Garcia running for Congress in Texas's newly drawn Congressional District 35. Thanks for joining us. You can learn more about Johnny Garcia all over social media. Follow him online and visit his website. What was that website, Johnny?
VoteJohnnyGarcia.com. We need every little bit of help to get us over the finish line. You can make your grassroots contribution there, and would love to be your nominee heading into November.
All right. Thank you so much, Johnny Garcia. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Bexar County voters have some tough decisions to make, especially in the race for Bexar County District Attorney. Listen, if you don't like what you're seeing in our politics today, remember, our democracy only works when you and I, the voters, actively participate and show up to the polls. Take a look around at everything the other side is doing to try to restrict your access to the ballot box, canceling elections in places like Louisiana, and even cheating their way through victories by gerrymandering, trying to take away birthright citizenship. These things are not normal, and we cannot allow ourselves to fall in the trap of normalizing this kind of extremism. We have to keep showing up at the polls, keep being there for our friends and neighbors, and make sure we speak up whenever we see injustice. Remember, you're important. This country belongs to you and me, and we cannot and we will not be erased. God bless you all. Have a great week. We'll see you out at the polls.